Good afternoon. I've tried to put this video up. This is the second attempt. You know, Pinchas brought forgiveness for the people of Israel because of his efforts. And you learn from there that the actions of a tzaddik has a direct effect on the rest of us. And when one tzaddik does something or lives through something, he has preventative powers that prevents others from having to go through that. One such tzaddik in Detroit was Rabbi Kaufman, Rabbi Shmuel Kaufman, who passed away last week, whose shiva was just finished, suffered greatly throughout his life, and despite that, was a very positive and enthusiastic, happy, and powerful mashpia, had an effect upon thousands of students, and he was, at an early age, he was struck with polio. He had to live life with crutches. He was limited physically in many ways, but he never ever complained, and his enthusiasm was infectious, and his influence was far beyond what was expected from a person that appeared to be like he belonged in the most holy places in Yerushalayim, and he was living among the rest of us in Detroit. He had a profound influence on many, many people, many hundreds of people, including my past president, Dr. Arnold Zuroff, who, inspired by him, besides giving millions of dollars to tzedakah, gave away between $20 and $40 million of free dentistry throughout his lifetime. An incredible individual, but inspired by Rabbi Kaufman. Rabbi Kaufman was the greatest storyteller that I have ever seen in my life. He was absolutely mesmerizing. The ability of him to communicate and to grab your attention was so incredible that I asked him one time, "How did you become such a great storyteller?" And he told me this was a blessing from your Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I'll tell you some other time. And at the funeral of Dr. Zuroff's mother-in-law, Joanne's mother, he told me the story while I was driving him to the cemetery. The Kaufmans were not blessed with children right away. And they went from one doctor to a second doctor, then finally to a third doctor, and each doctor, instead of giving the bad news to Rabbi Kaufman, who could take it, gave the bad news to Mrs. Kaufman, and this created some very great difficulty in the family life. Rabbi Kaufman used to study Chassidus the first years with Rabbi Meir Abson, and Meir told him, Meir was a storybook character in his own right, and he says, "Don't be an idiot." He used a different word, it started with a shin, you could use imagination. "Get some Rebbe and go to the Rebbe." Rabbi Kaufman had been a Talmud, a student in Lubavitcher Yeshiva when he was younger, in Bedford and Dean, and of course knew about the Rebbe. He decided it was worthwhile. He would go for Shabbos to his parents or in-laws, who lived in Brooklyn then, and he would go a Thursday for a Thursday night meeting with the Rebbe, see what the Rebbe had to say. He brought in all of his medical records, Mrs. Kaufman's medical records, and was ready for whatever the Rebbe would say. Their appointment was meant for Thursday night at 11 p.m. Unfortunately, 11 p.m. turned to 12 a.m., to 1 a.m., to 2 a.m., and by that time they were getting tired, and they were upset, and they were really frustrated. They looked at each other, maybe this isn't worth it. This is so rude. We had an appointment for 11, and we still haven't been taken in. And there was another couple in the waiting room, and they said, we came from such a long distance, and this is not appropriate. You know, so the other couple asked him, so where did you come from? He says, so we came from all the way from Detroit. So they didn't know where Detroit was, of course. And they said, well, that must be far. And they asked the other couple, says, where are you from? And they said, well, we're from Australia, about 20 times the distance. And they said, well, what are you doing here in the States? He says, they said, we're here just to get the Rebbe's bracha, and after Shabbos, we're going to turn around and go back to Australia. So they figured this couple looked pretty normal, and if they were willing to just come for the Rebbe's bracha, maybe they should stay too. So sometime after 2 a.m., they entered the Rebbe's office, and they presented the Rebbe with their requests, and the Rebbe goes through the paperwork of the medical records, and the Rebbe just comments. He says, if you have money to burn, you can continue going to doctors. Rabbi Kaufman told me if I was a chassid, I would have stopped going. I would have saved a lot of money. But then the Rebbe said, you still have to have your own intellect when you're going to doctors. For example, you gave this test to your wife twice. Don't you know that this test causes great pain in a woman? So he says, I didn't know. And Mrs. Kaufman says, you didn't ask. And the Rebbe said, if the test is negative, then you don't have to administer it again. But the doctor used a different method. One used air, the other used oil. The Rebbe said, nothing doing. If there's nothing there, then you don't have to do it again. So the Rebbe then turned to Rabbi Kaufman and he asked him, tell me, do you teach your students, do you ever tell them stories about great rabbis, Sipurei Tzadikim, stories of the righteous? So he says, no. So the Rebbe asked him, Favos, nicht, why not? So Rabbi Kaufman told me, I forgot for the moment whom I was talking to. So he says, it's bittul Torah, it's a waste of time, for taking away from Torah study. So he says the Rebbe got up in his full height, and he pounded his fist on the table, and he said, a story from Torah is also Torah. V'achois leiten timna. He says, from now on, I want you to tell your students stories, and you'll have greater effect with your stories than you will with your Torah. And then the Rebbe asked him, do you invite your children for Shabbos afternoon to study with you? He says, yes. And what do you teach them? He says, I teach them the Gemara, the Talmud that we study during the week. I review with them. So the Rebbe said, what about the Torah portion? He says, no. So the Rebbe said, from now on, I want you to review the Torah portion, and I want you to also teach them about the next week's Torah portion, so that the children will eagerly anticipate going to shul the next Shabbos to hear about that which they had studied earlier in the week, that they should want, this would increase their desire to go to shul, to see what happened in the Torah about which they began to study the Shabbos before. And then the Rebbe asked him, tell me, Rabbi Kaufman, did you ever insult a Jewish girl? So Rabbi Kaufman said, Chas v'sholem, never. So the Rebbe said, let me rephrase that. Did you ever tell a Jewish girl that you were going to marry her and you didn't fulfill your promise? So never. I never did that. So the Rebbe says, let me rephrase that. Did you ever give a girl a gift that she thought you said you were going to marry her and didn't fulfill it? Oh, he says, a couple of years before I married my wife, I was going out with this girl. Everybody thought we were an item, and I bought the girl a gold bracelet, but I realized it wasn't going to work, and I explained to her why. So the Rebbe asked Rabbi Kaufman, did you ask her forgiveness? Oh, no, I never asked her forgiveness, but I don't even remember who the girl is. So the Rebbe said, more than likely you'll remember her name after you leave my office. So he says, Rebbe, do I have to ask her myself? It's embarrassing. The Rebbe said, no, you can send a shliach, you can send an agent. So he says, Rebbe, what kind of an agent can I send? I remember she had a brother, a Lubavitcher. Could I ask her brother to be my agent? The Rebbe says, yes, but I want there to be someone else besides him. So who, he asked? So the Rebbe says his wife could do, but there should be more than one. Then Rabbi Kaufman says, but Rebbe, how do I know that she forgives me with all of her heart? Forgiveness has got to be belev sholim, with all of her heart. So the Rebbe says, in that case you will tell her in my name that I guarantee her that if she forgives you with all of your heart, that she will immediately find her bashert, the one that she's destined to marry, and right away she would get married. So Rabbi Kaufman says, you guarantee? The Rebbe says, yeah, I guarantee. So he says, I never heard of a blessing with a guarantee. So the Rebbe says, a guarantee. So I never heard of a blessing with a guarantee. How could that be? So the Rebbe says, listen, my good man, a blessing is like rain. The belief in the efficacy of the blessing is the soft earth that absorbs the rain. If the earth is hard, there's no belief, then the blessing runs off. Oh, no, it's okay, said Rabbi Kaufman. And they left close to 4 a.m. It was too late to call. And so on Motzei Shabbos, Rabbi Kaufman calls the brother of this girl that had been jilted. It was Rabbi Herschel Fogelman, the storied shliach of Worcester, Massachusetts, who was a shliach for 70 years. And Saturday night he calls Rabbi Herschel. He says, Herschel. He says, yes. He says, this is Shmuel Kaufman. You may not remember me, but several years ago I was going with your sister, and I broke it up. And the Rebbe told me that I have to ask forgiveness. Is it possible that you could serve as my shliach, my agent, to ask your sister forgiveness? So Rabbi Herschel told him, it just so happens that she's here in Worcester for Shabbos. I could ask her right away. So he says, listen, the Rebbe said to tell her that if she forgives me with all of her heart, that the Rebbe guarantees her that she will get married, she will meet her bashert right away and get married soon after. Okay, said Reb Herschel. So, Reb Herschel, what are you going to tell your sister? So I'll tell her that if she forgives you with all of her heart, the Rebbe gives her a bracha to get married right away. No. He says, when you're a shliach, you have to say it exactly like the Rebbe said. It has to be a guarantee. You have to say the word guarantee. Otherwise, you're not my shliach. Otherwise, you're not doing as the Rebbe said. This was a non-Lubavitcher telling a Lubavitcher how to be a shliach of the Rebbe. Anyway, Rabbi Herschel says, okay. Says, Rabbi Kaufman says, I'm waiting. And 2 minutes later, Rabbi Herschel got on the phone. He says, mission accomplished. Rabbi Kaufman put the receiver down. 3 weeks later, 5:45 in the morning, he's sleeping. Sunday morning, he gets a call. She became a kala. Who? Mazel tov. Why are you waking me up at 5:45? The girl you asked forgiveness just became a kala last night. It was Mrs. Afton. On that day, Rabbi Kaufman's wife had a pregnancy test that was positive. Besides the profundity of how we affect our relationships, affect others and ourselves, the anger that the girl had against Rabbi Kaufman made it impossible also for her to meet her basher, to meet her chosen. She was attached still to Rabbi Kaufman. Yeah, she caused that he couldn't have children, but she herself was still attached, and she couldn't marry herself. She had to release the anger in order for both of them to continue on with life. And they succeeded, had many children, and were successful at it.